Welcome to the Herd's official YouTube channel. Make sure to like and subscribe. Don't forget to check out the Colin Cowherd podcast, all of our NFL instant reactions, and more football content.
So you see this sometimes where a great actor has a role. Tom Hanks does The Terminal. He makes a bad choice. You see great regress. Marlon Brando had Bombs. You see a Zagat Michelin star restaurant, a chef leaves. It's good, but it's not special. You see great slowly sometimes kind of regress into good. You very rarely see hot dog on a stick become Zagat rated. You don't see, atrocious become exceptional. Like, it just doesn't happen, especially in sports. So Sam Darnold was so bad in New York, I was like, I don't know what happened. I thought he was going to be sort of a little bit of Andrew Luck. His last 2 years, he is now, with all analytics, the best quarterback in the NFL. No, I mean, and they just added Rashid Shaheed, a deep threat. So now he's got a deep threat, JSN, that rookie from Colorado State. The O-line's better. He's literally gone from unplayable to best guy in the league. And I was saying, if you just count quarterbacks that have played, every game this year, you can't count Lamar Jackson in this. What is the quarterback pyramid based just on this year alone for quarterback play? What does it look like? And this is what it looks like. Sorry for the radio audience. We have a little Collins quarterback performance period. Darnold's number one. Allen and Stafford right below him. Drake May, Herbert, Baker Mayfield, Mahomes, Jones, Prescott, and Goff. Now, that's not necessarily that far from reality. Now, if you're talking careers, Mahomes would be at the top. But if you're talking today, this second, Sam Darnold is the best quarterback in the NFL. It is unbelievable. You just don't see that ever. You could say, well, what about Baker? Baker in Cleveland won a playoff game. And the year he did, his quarterback rating was, I think it was 96 or 98. I think it was 96. Sam's passer rating in New York was not even good for a backup. He had more turnovers than touchdowns. Like, forget the winning. It wasn't productive. It was awful. And we know now that everybody's awful with the Jets. But what he is doing is incredibly rare. So, Bill Belichick was on a podcast yesterday, and I've said this multiple times on the show. The hottest quarterback in the league outside of Sam Darnold is probably Matt Stafford. And I've said before, where you land in the NFL matters a lot. If Stafford would have landed in Green Bay and Aaron Rodgers, who can be moody, would have landed in Detroit, we would look at Stafford differently. Stafford was better than Aaron Rodgers in high school, in college, and he's better now by a long shot. And he was better in the first 3 or 4 years in the NFL than Rodgers. But Aaron had that 10, 11-year run in Green Bay because he had a really good organization. And it's going to be fascinating to see what if Matt Stafford wins this year's Super Bowl. And right now I think they're the best team or second best team in the league. Like, what happens? Bill Belichick was on a recent podcast talking about this Matt Stafford.
I don't want to put him in a class with Tom, but I mean, it's reminiscent of Brady, where it just keeps getting better and better and better. I remember when we practiced against him and played him several years ago, gotten smarter. He understands more. He knows how to use weapons, maybe just a split second quicker. He's a little harder to fool, and something you might have got him with a couple of years ago, you're not going to get him with now.
What's really cruel about quarterback is by the time you master it, you're usually like 33, 34, 35. That's when Brady started saying things to like Jay Glazer, like, I've seen everything. You can't fool me. Brady talked about a Super Bowl against Patrick Mahomes. He's like, I knew what the Chiefs defense was going to do better than the Chiefs defense knew what they were going to do. And so, but Brady had a great advantage. He had the best offensive line coach probably ever, Dante Scarnecchia. So Brady just didn't get hit for most of his career. So Brady at 44 had a 34-year-old body. That's not the case with Stafford, who got the you-know-what beat out of him for 12 years in Detroit. So he's 37, and he looks 37 with a really bad back. But I've asked the question before, if he wins a Super Bowl this year, I mean, he's already all-time completions 8th, yards 9th, passing touchdowns 9th, game-winning drives 5th, and wins, he's moving up fast. So there's just not many quarterbacks in the history of the league that have 2 Super Bowls and an MVP. It's Mahomes, Brady, Manning, Elway, Montana, Bradshaw, and Bart Starr. So there's only one quarterback in this league that can go from really, really great to historic. This is it. Quarterbacks with 2 Super Bowl wins and an MVP, at least one. It's all the legends. Mahomes, Peyton, Tom, Elway, Montana, Bradshaw, Bart Starr. Stafford can get into that group. And so his last 5 games, 16 touchdowns, no picks. He is just on an absolute heater. The question, and he's done this, what's amazing is no training camp. He learned on the fly with Davante Adams. So what's really impressive, an undrafted left tackle, learned on the fly with Davante Adams, did not participate to any extent in preseason, and proving once again what Sean McVay always felt is the exhibition season is a lot of nonsense. It doesn't really matter. But you and I, J-Mac, you've actually been on this forever. Where you land in the NFL is about 75% of your success as a quarterback. I mean, a great example is Caleb Williams with that outfit last year. Everybody bailed on him. This year, the Bears lead the NFL in big plays. So the gap in coaching, obviously McVay is better than anybody Detroit had. But here was Max Crosby of the Raiders recently talking about Stafford as a potential MVP.
For some reason, just because their team wasn't the best, like, he didn't get that love until he went to the Rams. Now people are like, see? I'm like, bro, he's been doing that for 10 years in Detroit. It would be dope to see Stafford win MVP because people are like, well, is he an Hall of Famer? I'm like, he's been top 5 for 15 years. I don't give a what anyone says.
Can we have this conversation?
I don't give a what anyone says.
Oh, that's absolutely true. I mean, think about this. Think how much trust that Sean McVay had to have to not only trade away a Super Bowl quarterback in Goff, but be willing to pay for Stafford and Goff simultaneously. So Sean McVay knows more football than you or me. Sean McVay's like, yeah, I'm going to move off Goff, who, by the way, has been a top 12 quarterback for most of his career. He's like, I'll move off him. I'll take an old Stafford that's never won a playoff game, and I'll pay for both. That is having there are certain people in baseball's like this a lot, where you go ask baseball players who's really good, who's a bit of a fraud, and they'll be like, oh, no, this guy's actually great. Everybody understands it. You go ask pro football players about Matt Stafford. They're all like Matt Crosby. They're like, bro, that guy's been a top 5 quarterback for 15 years. He just got crappy Detroit. So the great thing about him, he is a film room junkie. His wife makes more news than he does. He's never in the news. He's kind of a regular guy. You'll see him golfing occasionally in town at one of the country clubs, but he really is low key, very chill. But he's the only quarterback in the league that can go from great to historic this year.
Yeah. I mean, I would say he's certainly in the MVP discussion. Now, getting Davante Adams clearly helps.
Oh, no question.
Like a major upgrade. I mean, Cooper Kupp was like one of their core guys. He was beloved out here. They moved off him pretty easily. Yeah. What has he done in Seattle, Colin? Like next to nothing. And they upgraded.
Well, he's their 4 now in Seattle.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had young receivers. Snyder said, we'll bring an old veteran possession guy in. But I'll say, if Cooper Kupp's your 4, that's not a bad receiving.
But McVay's done a great job with Snead and company, just constantly retooling the team. Yeah.
All right, today's show is brought to you by our new presenting sponsor, Hard Rock Bet. They're a great partner. There's always something to bet on. If you haven't tried your first bet on Hard Rock Bet yet, there's still time for you to get $150 in bonus bets. If you win, just place a $5 bet. That's it, $5. If it hits, you not only get your winnings, but you get $150 in extra bonus bets. The NBA is back, which means it's time to shoot your shot on Hard Rock Bet. You're home for all the hoops action all season long. If you need a little help with your first bet, check out the streaks heating up inside the Hard Rock Bet Stats Hub. You can find live odds to bet on all of these streaks right in the Hard Rock Bet app. Download the Hard Rock Bet app today and make your first deposit.
Greg Cosell, 46 years, NFL Films, is joining us live. So, it's interesting. If you look at Patrick Mahomes' career, his kryptonite, when they really, really look bad, It's not that the running game's not available. He's won Super Bowls with below average, suboptimal receiving cores. Travis Kelce's had bad games. He's still won. He won Super Bowls with mediocre defenses. When he's getting hit and does not trust his protection, that offense does not look the same. So was this just about scheme by Buffalo's defense, or was it Bosa and personnel? Why did they get to Mahomes for 3.5 hours?
I think it's a combination, Colin, because what Sean McDermott did, and just so I say right up front, I'm not a blueprint guy. I don't think Mahomes has had obviously great success in this league, and he's a great player. So it's not as if, oh, just do what the Bills did, and everybody's going to stop Patrick Mahomes. But in this particular game, what the Bills did was they ran a lot of what we call hybrid coverages, where there were zone parts of it, there were man parts of it, and all you're trying to do is you're trying to slow down the processing for Patrick Mahomes, and that's when the pressure becomes a factor. And he did not really get out of the pocket very much. They did a good job of maintaining him, keeping him in the pocket. So in this given game, I thought it was very schematic in what they did on the back end with their hybrid looks, and therefore he couldn't really get a sense of rhythm. And he's not purely a rhythm player except when he's throwing the ball short. So it just slowed everything down for him, and then he took way too many hits. I mean, there was one in particular on the sideline. I don't think I've ever seen him hit like that.
Yeah. You know, Josh Allen came into this league with so much horsepower, and now he's become so incredibly efficient. And we always sort of have baked it in, Greg, that if you have a big arm, if you're Big Ben, if you're Cam Newton, we don't need you to be Kirk Cousins. You go do your magic. We'll give you a little on the efficiency scale. Yet with Allen, I get both. He can give me a 22 for a 25, and I get the horsepower. Right. Why has he become so efficient?
Well, I'm sure a lot of it has to do with him in the offseason. We know, I'm sure you know Jordan Palmer. He's worked with him for years, and I think that he's what they call a rotational thrower. So when you're a rotational thrower, I think you have to really work on that as opposed to being a linear thrower where everything is lined up exactly straight. When you're rotational, you can throw the ball from different angles, different ways, and I think you have to really become good at that. So now, I think they also understood, and this is where I think Joe Brady did a very good job when he became the coordinator, is I think schematically they've tried to rein him in to a certain degree, to allow him to play with a much more defined sense of timing and rhythm rather than just, hey, you know, you hear so many people say things about certain quarterbacks. Well, let this guy be this guy. Let Josh be Josh. That's all well and good, but at some point you've got to play the game within structure. And you can argue that the Bills offensively, and they do score a lot of points, Colin, that offensively they're one of the most structured teams in the NFL with the combination of their run game and their pass game. And their pass game at times actually, sometimes I feel like there could be more to it. But if you're going to score 30 points a game, I guess that's a tough argument to make.
So Green Bay's the youngest team in the league. Seattle's offense, Seattle's second. So Darnold, when he leaves Minnesota, there were a lot of people that thought, okay, it's going to come down. He's not going to look like that. Well, right now, analytics tells you he's as good as any quarterback in the league. Are you surprised that how successful he's been in Seattle? We didn't even know if JSN was a #1 receiver. Like, are you surprised by what you're seeing?
Yes and no. But by the way, JSN, 80% of his routes this year, of his snaps, have been as an outside receiver. And if you recall, a lot of people said when they signed Cooper Kupp, what are they doing? They have 2 slot receivers. Well, they obviously knew JSN could line up outside, which he's done, as I said, on 80% of his snaps. But I'm not surprised with Darnold for this reason. He's really gifted, as you know. You know Darnold well. But he's a certain kind of player. You know, he's not necessarily a sit back in the pocket, read it, scan it, see it all. So what Clint Kubiak is the one who wanted him, he sort of comes a bit from that Shanahan-Kubiak tree of play action boot, define the reads and the throws, push it down the field off the run action looks. And that's where Darnold is really, really good. And he does throw the ball very well on the run. So it's a classic case of matching what a quarterback does really well, because he does have some things he doesn't do well, of matching what he does really well with the scheme, and you see how successful. There's a perfect example on that play-action boot. Worked perfectly. They got the long touchdown to Cody White.
By the way, Rashid Shaheed is a burner.
Oh.
How does that, that feels like, to me, that plays into Darnold. What do you project there?
Yes. Well, first of all, there's very few guys in the league, Colin, that have what I call terrifying speed, and he's one of them.
Yeah.
And now they're a team that plays a lot with 2 tight ends, 12 personnel, as we call it, 2 tight ends. So what happens a lot when you play that way is you get a defense that sees the formation, the personnel, the formations, and they think run. So they play a lot with a single high safety. So now you're going to get an opportunity to really work the intermediate and vertical route concepts off shot plays, off run action, and you have to account for Shaheed. And now on the other side, you're going to have JSN. This is that trade to me, maybe it was overlooked by some people because Shaheed's not a star in the way we think of stars, but that may have been one of the most impactful trades that were made on Tuesday.
So J.J. McCarthy, and we see this, we saw it with Caleb early in the year, very good on script. And then the last 3 quarters, not good at all. I said when I watch him play with Minnesota, I see a lot of Michigan J.J. McCarthy. Where at Michigan, I love the coach Harbaugh.
Right.
I love some of the weapons, Justin Jefferson or Colston Loveland. And I love the defense. And I thought the defense against Detroit was sensational. And he makes about 1 to 2 big throws a game, J.J. McCarthy. Overall, I don't see him somebody carrying a franchise. But, I liked Michigan's supporting cast. I like Kevin O'Connell, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, the left tackle, Brian Flores. What did the film say on J.J. McCarthy?
Yeah. McCarthy, to me, has something that, in some ways, it reminds me of Alex Smith. And what I'm about to say, and this concerns me as he develops. He's what we call, Colin, I'm going to give you a little tutorial here on quarterback mechanics. He's what we call a locked front leg thrower.
Yeah.
So when he steps in, he locks his front leg. So what happens when you lock your front leg, it's like running into a wall. You can't really transfer your weight. You don't get any core torque. So if you watch him throw, you'll notice that it looks like he's working hard to throw the ball. Now, I don't think his arm, just as an arm, is bad, but it limits your ability to drive the football because you can't really bring your core into your throw. And there's been quarterbacks throughout the years like that. Alex Smith, as I said, is a great example. And based on what you said, you might think he's very much like an Alex Smith in the way he's going to have to play. And by the way, Alex Smith, on teams he was on, won a lot of football games.
Right.
So you can win, but I think it'll be interesting to see how his career progresses. But you're right. And by the way, Brian Flores did an unbelievable job in that game against the Lions. And you know what stood out watching that tape? The pressure in the A-gap. And you know why the pressure in the A-gap was so important? Because you know what that did? It made Jahmyr Gibbs have to stay in to pass protect. Yeah. And that may not seem like a big deal when you're watching the game, but therefore he's not getting out in space and killing them as a receiver. I don't know how many times, I didn't count it, I don't know how many times Jahmyr Gibbs had to pass protect because of A-gap pressure. It had to be definitely more than 10, and that really handicapped the Lions' pass game.
So I just went on a rant about the Jets, and when a workplace environment's lousy and then you go to a good work environment, the same employee can be a different employee. Sauce Gardner with Robert Saleh was excellent. In the last couple years, he's bad. Well, he didn't lose length, speed, he didn't lose intelligence, he didn't lose any of those qualities. It's just a bad work environment. Sauce Gardner to the Colts. And Chris Ballard told me years ago, we were texting, he said, there's a cornerback shortage in the league. He goes, everybody can find a third or a fourth great receiver. Nobody can find a second good corner. It's hard. Right. They're not out there. So I like the move by the Colts. What do you make of it?
Yeah, and that's why I think it's hard to look at what Gardner's done the last year and a half, because there are not many guys at 6'3", 210 pounds that move like he does. There's not a ton of those guys. So again, we're not in New York. We don't know the environment, but obviously it has to wear on you after a certain amount of time. But he'll obviously step right in and start and play. I guess they play overseas this weekend. But the Colts are a team that plays a lot of different coverage schemes. So it's not as if foundationally they do one thing. And I think he's got the ability to pretty much play any coverage scheme that you want him to play. They actually have a very good defense, Colin. I mean, everybody's been talking for the most part about Daniel Jones and Taylor and the offense, and deservedly so. And by the way, I didn't think Daniel Jones was as bad as maybe a lot of people thought this past week. But just talking about their defense, they've got a lot of good players at all three levels of their defense. This is going to be a real interesting team to watch.
I want to talk, if I could, about Dak in Arizona. On Monday night. Forget Arizona. Jacoby Brissett's a pro. The Dallas defense isn't good. When Dak struggles like that, is it pressure? Is it coaching? I didn't think it was a good night for Dallas's coaching staff. And by the way, great coaches have bad nights. What did you make of Dallas's offense?
Yeah, I thought it was a tough watching their offense. And Dak, we've talked about this over the years. Dak is a good player, no question. But at this point in his career, he doesn't have the same movement that he once had. He's essentially at his core now a pocket player. So he's a ball distributor. He's an executor of an offense. It needs to be in rhythm. It needs to be in timing. If it's not clear to him for whatever reason, the defense takes it away, he feels a little pressure, then he's not going to play quite as well. It's just the way it is. But there are some games where he's really very, very good. He certainly is a veteran who sees things. But every once in a while, I remember years ago, Ron Jaworski telling me that there's 2 games a year where you just don't see it the right way. And I got that impression watching the tape of him the other night. It just didn't seem comfortable. He didn't seem like a comfortable player. And that can happen. And by the way, Arizona does have a defense that does a lot of things that can make it difficult for quarterbacks.
Yeah. All right. There's 2 games this weekend getting a lot of attention. One of them, Philadelphia at Green Bay.
Yeah.
So you got to be careful. Green Bay has lost to Cleveland, Carolina, but they can play with the best teams in the league. Does Green Bay match up with Philly's personnel?
You mean overall, like the roster?
Yes. I mean, when you look at what you've seen on film from Green Bay, here's what I've said about Green Bay, Greg. They're a team with talent, but I don't know what they are. What is your identity? I think they want to run, and they're not terribly effective at it.
They haven't been this year. And Matt LaFleur always wants to run because he comes from the Shanahan school. So he definitely wants the run game to be a strong foundation. Last week was an odd game for them, Colin. They had 8 possessions. They never punted, and they scored 13 points. That's a very odd game. Now, they had a fumble in the red zone, but the run game this year has not been what it's been the last couple of years with Jacobs. And it's hard to know why, but it just hasn't been the same. And I think Love's a really good player. He had a really reckless interception last week, which he doesn't do very much. But it was a very odd game. If you look at Love's game on tape and then his numbers, they were fine. It wasn't as if he had a bad game. That's the interception. That was just reckless and undisciplined. But they're starting to lose receivers. We have always said, boy, they've got a ton of receivers, but now they're starting to lose receivers to injury. Tucker Kraft is out for the season. I'm really anxious to see from your old neck of the woods in the Pacific Northwest, Musgrave, because when Musgrave came out, he was hurt his last year at Oregon, but he was considered a really big-time prospect. I did his tape. He's faster than Kraft. Now I'm not saying he's as good, not as good. We don't know that because he wasn't used as their number 1 tight end. He will be now, but he's got a lot of juice to him. So I'm very curious to see how that fits into their offense.
Also another game, the Rams and the Niners. Now the Niners are plagued with injuries. I've always been I'm fascinated when you can go get a Puka, who I watched at Washington and BYU, and then he goes to McVay, and from the very first training camp, Stafford was telling people, this Puka kid is unbelievable. He's not the fastest guy. I do think he's physically strong. When you watch this Rams offense, how crucial is Puka? Now, over in London, he didn't play, and they used 4 tight ends. And Devontae Adams now is a growing relationship with Stafford. Stafford had no camp. How important is Puka in this offense, and why does he excel to the level he does?
Well, there's a couple of things going on here. First of all, the last 2 games they played a lot with 3 tight ends on the field, which is crazy. The last week they had 35 snaps with 3 tight ends on the field. But I think McVay understands exactly what Puka Nacua is. He's not what we call a true boundary X, where he lines up as the isolated or single receiver to one side of the field and you let him just win one-on-one. He's not that guy. In fact, only 2 of his 198 routes this year have been where he's been an isolated receiver. That's why they went out and got Devontae Adams, because he is that guy. That's how they use him. But McVay understands what Nacua is. They use him as a movement guy. They use him as part of 2 and 3 route combinations. They get him off the line cleanly. He runs a lot of in-breaking routes, and that's where he's so good because he's so physically strong.
Yes.
And he's a great player within the context of how he's used and what Sean McVay understands his strengths to be. I'm not sure, no matter what his numbers are, Colin, and I would think you would agree, I'm not sure anybody would say just as a physical talent that you're going to put him in the Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase category.
Yeah.
But he's a great player within the context of that offense.
Yeah, fit matters in life and in sports.
Yeah.
Let's do some Caleb Williams. We'll end our segment on a Thursday here in the Herd. First of all, what did the tape say? Let's just simplify here. What did the tape say with Caleb against the Bengals?
I thought, and again, we know the Bengals are a bad defense, but that's not what I'm looking at. I thought this was a game, maybe the first one this year, where I thought the combination of looking at what Ben Johnson did offensively, and I said to myself, oh, this is a Ben Johnson offense. This is what we want to see from Ben Johnson. This reminded me of the Lions offense, seeing the same concepts, and it was a game where I thought that Caleb really started to get a feel for those concepts. Now, there's still throws where he's a beat late. There's still times where there's just a little too much freneticism in the pocket, and he gets out of there, and it just looks random. That's what he has to continue to develop. But I got to tell you, Colin, and you know this, I mean, this kid, particularly on the move, he's got a power hose now.
Oh, it's incredible.
He throws as pretty a ball as you'll see in the league, but there's still work to do. But it just started. There were some plays in this game where I just felt like, oh, yeah, this is the way Ben Johnson wants it to look.
Greg Cosell on a Thursday. As always, great stuff. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Colin. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I know you were all worked up on all the gifts that the Jets got, but even you would have to acknowledge is if you look at this league of teams that have had 2 first-round picks, it's a lot of Raiders. It's a lot of Panthers. It's a lot of Cleveland. And that's my take is it's like giving somebody with no financial literacy a small Powerball win. They'll screw it up. I mean, I knew the Jets were broken when they fired Saleh as he was going to Buffalo with a chance to be tied for first. And Saleh was the best coach on the staff.
Right.
And it's like, guys, you got to identify, you have to self-scout. You have to identify in any business who are the best employees, who are the weak spots. Saleh was your best coach and you let him go. And to me, since that point on, I've looked at the Jets. It's like they just can't get out of their own way. They can't even identify their own best employees.
Yeah, that was a flub for sure. But listen, the Jets have crushed the draft before. I mean, a few years ago, Garrett Wilson, Jermaine Johnson, Breece Hall, like they had an awesome draft. They just didn't have a quarterback. Aaron Rodgers let them down. He got hurt. Well, I don't know what you could do about that. So just because you failed in the past, a different regime, I don't see why you shouldn't be taking more shots in the future. Come on, what was it? What's a Michael Jordan quote? I missed more game-winning shots than I made or something like that.
I don't think that's it.
Oh, I'm close. I'm in the ballpark. Bottom line is you got to keep shooting, keep firing. Don't give up just because you failed draft picks in the past. Come on. You got 6 months to identify a quarterback. Less than that, probably like 5, to identify a quarterback if you want one. Or, hold on, Colin, you could go the Giants route. Take a defensive player in the top 3 and take your quarterback at the end of the first round if you don't think there's one there.
I think Mendoza at Indiana is going to win it.
Warming up to him, huh?
Well, no, everybody now. Again, you don't know. You have to watch everybody. I think what's happening is Dante Moore, people like, he may go back to Oregon. Mendoza's the play.
It's Mendoza or Simpson right now. We'll see.
I think Mendoza's a bigger, stronger athlete.
He's just smart. Have you checked his LinkedIn page recently?
No, he's the kid.
He updates that. He's a genius.
Yeah, the kid's really smart. So when Ben Johnson got hired, people may forget this. Ben Johnson was offered another job. He was offered a job and mid-flight decided to turn the plane around. I'm not going to take the job. And a lot of us, myself included, were like, are you going to go back to Detroit? Can you top what you're doing in Detroit? So Ben Johnson eventually takes a job in Chicago. And he took it for a large degree, not because they were particularly well run, but he knew the division, and Caleb Williams was super talented. And he thought to himself, well, I've got all this production with Jared Goff. This kid in Chicago's got more talent than Jared Goff. And so when he was with the Lions, Ben Johnson's offense was third in big plays with Jared Goff. Now it's number one in the league in big plays. And Greg Cosell came on 40 minutes ago to talk about Ben Johnson's impact with this Bears offense.
I thought this was a game, maybe the first one this year, where I thought the combination of looking at what Ben Johnson did offensively, and I said to myself, oh, this is a Ben Johnson offense. This is what we want to see from Ben Johnson. There's still times where there's just a little too much freneticism in the pocket, and he gets out of there, and it just looks random. That's what he has to continue to develop. But I got to tell you, Colin, and you know this, I mean, this kid, particularly on the move, he's got a power hose now.
Also, the Bears are second in the NFL in rushing. I think Buffalo's first. So we always think there's a gap in quarterback play. But, there's a big gap in coaching in this league. There's a big gap in coordinators, in owners, in general managers. And everybody that I've talked to, texted in the league, they all think Ben Johnson is next level. Kevin O'Connell, McVay, Shanahan level, just a next level coordinator. And it takes time. But when you watch the Bears play, they got a lot of jet fuel. They've got the ability to make big plays at any part on the field. And it's, again, he was the hot commodity in coaching, and he has delivered on it. Usually you get 7 openings a year in the NFL. There's always one guy that gets a job, and you kind of know it's going to work. Like either it's a good organization, like Mike Vrabel this year was obviously going to work. Jim Harbaugh last year to the Chargers was obviously going to work. Sean Payton 2 years ago to Denver. Yeah, that was a no-brainer. They had dead cap hell with Russell Wilson's contract. Coaches matter. You've got to pay $10 million plus. So there's a lot of things you can go cheap on in business or in life. You can't on the coach. It's amazing to me. I'm trying to think of the best coach available right now. That's why I keep saying keep your eye on Lane Kiffin. If I was the New York Jets or the New York Giants, I would consider Lane Kiffin. Jackson Dart loved him at Ole Miss. Reunite those two. It feels like Lane Kiffin, who coached in the NFL, but it was an older Al Davis, highly flammable, highly dysfunctional. Al Davis loved Jamarcus Russell. Lane Kiffin warned him it's not going to work in the NFL, and it didn't. Lane was right. So Lane's grown. I'm not sure if there is a great candidate. Some have suggested Bill Belichick from Carolina, but I do think, and this isn't a shot at Bill, I think Bill's best days are over. I don't think he has the energy, and I think Bill is a little like Jerry Jones right now, Bill Belichick, is that they're only willing to there are stipulations to their performance. Belichick only wants to coach certain players. You can't have stipulations. You just have to get the best players. Jerry Jones, I'll hire a coach, but I want control. Well, you're not going to get control with Jim Harbaugh or Sean Payton. So the best coaches right now, the best candidates to me, Mike McCarthy, who's a good B-plus candidate, Jesse Minter, defensive coordinator, who's got kind of a Mike McDonald Seahawks feel, and Lane Kiffin. So one's a great college coach, one's won a Super Bowl, and one's a coordinator. But with the Jets, you've done the coordinator multiple times. It's not working. If I was the Jets, I would go get Mike McCarthy. I would go get a proven B-plus coach, give him Mendoza out of Indiana, and use those picks. I think the Jets have to go head coach. The other openings in the league, I wouldn't have a problem with Jesse Minter. So I'm not saying coordinators can't work, but in the Jets case, it's time to go spend some money, spend $10 million and get a pro.
Couldn't you argue that Glenn, who was in Detroit with Dan Campbell, Dan Campbell struggled when he was hired by Detroit. Remember, they started like 1-7 that one year before turning it around. You got to give Glenn a little more time. How many coaches have the Jets had in the last like 6 years? Can't keep cycling through. You got to give him another year at least. You've seen nothing? They fought hard.
He's not good handling the media. He's not good situationally. I don't see a lot I like. I mean, offensively, just doesn't feel like he's got any say. Any
Kubiak?
That's something to consider. I'd like a head coach.